To understand World War II, we must look at World War I. In 1918, Germany lost. The winners, Britain, France, and America, wrote a peace contract. It was the Treaty of Versailles. This contract was very hard for Germany. It said, "You broke the world, now you must pay for it." It also told Germany, "Your army must be tiny, no big weapons, no big dreams." The next years were very bad for Germany. The government printed too much money. The money had no value. Children played with it like paper toys. People needed a big bag of money just to buy some bread. Everyone was hungry, poor, and tired. In this bad time, a new voice appeared, a loud voice, a voice full of anger. His name was Adolf Hitler. He shouted with fire in his eyes. He told people, "Germany is strong, Germany is great." He said the country did not lose fairly. Some people ignored him, others laughed at him, but many listened. Hitler promised simple answers. He promised jobs. He promised power. He promised pride. Slowly his group grew bigger. They marched, they shouted, they filled the streets with flags and songs. By 1933, Hitler had enough support to take control. He ended freedom. He ended voting. He became the absolute leader of Germany. A new, dark chapter of history was beginning. Chapter 2: The League That Did Nothing. After World War I, the world created a club. It was called the League of Nations. The rule was simple. If countries have a problem, they talk about it here. No more fighting. It sounded like a great idea, but there was a problem. The League had no army. It had no power. It was like a teacher who cannot punish students. In 1931, Japan was growing. Japan had a strong army and big ships. But Japan is an island. It has no oil or metal. Japan looked at China. China had lots of land and resources. Japan attacked a part of China called Manchuria. China called the League of Nations. "Help! Japan is attacking me!" The League said, "Hey, Japan, that is not nice. Please stop." Japan said, "No." Japan left the club. The League did nothing. Then Italy wanted to be strong too. The Italian boss was Benito Mussolini. He started fascism. Fascism is when the government controls everything. Mussolini wanted a new Roman Empire. In 1935, he attacked Ethiopia in Africa. Ethiopia called the League. "Help!" The League said, "Hey, Italy, that is very bad." Italy said, "I don't care." The League did nothing. Hitler was watching. He learned a lesson. Interesting, thought Hitler. I can do whatever I want. Nobody will stop me. Chapter 3: Breaking the Rules. Hitler started his plan. Rule 1 of the treaty: no big army. Hitler built a huge army. He built airplanes, Luftwaffe. He built submarines, U-boats. Britain and France saw this. They did nothing. They were scared of war. Rule 2 of the treaty: no soldiers near France, in the Rhineland. In 1936, Hitler sent soldiers into the Rhineland. His generals were nervous. "If France fights us, we will lose," they said. But France did not fight. France stayed home. Hitler became very popular in Germany. "See," he said, "I am a genius." Rule 3 of the treaty: Germany cannot join with Austria. Hitler was born in Austria. He wanted them to be one country. In 1938, German tanks rolled into Austria. It was called the Anschluss. The Austrians did not shoot. They threw flowers. They wanted to join Germany. Britain and France said, "Okay, but please stop now." Hitler said, "Maybe." Chapter 4: The Cookie Plan. Hitler looked at a map. He pointed to Czechoslovakia. He wanted the part called the Sudetenland. Many Germans lived there. "I want that," said Hitler. The president of Czechoslovakia said, "No, that is my country." He had a good army. He had forts. He was ready to fight. But Britain and France wanted to talk. The British leader was Neville Chamberlain. He flew to Munich to meet Hitler. This is famous as the Munich Conference. But they did not ask Czechoslovakia to come. Chamberlain said, "Adolf, please be nice. You can't just take countries." Hitler said, "Give me the Sudetenland. Then I will be happy. I will ask for nothing else. I promise." Chamberlain thought, "If I give him this cookie, he will stop being hungry." Chamberlain signed the paper. He flew home. He waved the paper in the air. "I have brought peace for our time," he said. Everyone cheered. But the Czechs were very sad. They lost their strong walls. They could not fight. 6 months later, Hitler ate the rest of the cookie. He took the whole of Czechoslovakia. Chamberlain looked foolish. "Oh," said Chamberlain, "he lied." Chapter 5: Strange Friends. Hitler had a problem. It was geography. Germany is in the middle of Europe. If he fights a war, he has France on the left, west, and Russia on the right, east. Fighting on two sides is bad. It is a two-front war. He needed to stop one side first. He looked at Russia, the Soviet Union. The leader was Joseph Stalin. Stalin was a communist. Hitler was a fascist. These two groups hated each other. They were real enemies. But Hitler sent a letter to Stalin. "Hey, Joe, I want to take Poland, but I don't want to fight you. Let's make a deal." Stalin was surprised, but he needed time to build his army. "Okay," said Stalin. "We will share Poland. You take half, I take half, and we won't fight each other. This was the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. The world was very surprised. The Nazis and Communists are friends? How? It was a trick, of course, but for now they were partners. Chapter 6. The War Begins, 1939. On September 1st, 1939, the German army went into Poland. This was not like World War I. In World War I, soldiers sat in deep holes, trenches, for years. This was new. This was Blitzkrieg, lightning war. How Blitzkrieg works: planes bomb the enemy bases and scare everyone. Tanks drive very fast and break the lines. Soldiers follow behind to take the land. Poland was brave. They fought hard. But their horses could not stop the German tanks. Then, on September 17th, Russia attacked Poland from the east. Poland was attacked from two sides, and it stopped being a country. Britain and France had promised to help Poland. They sent a message to Hitler. Get out of Poland, or it is war. Hitler did not listen. Britain and France started the war. The Second World War had officially started. Chapter 7. The Sleeping War. You might think big battles started right away, but strange things happened. Britain sent soldiers to France. They dug holes. They built sharp fences. And then they waited and waited. Germany was busy in Poland. Then Germany went on a winter holiday to fix their tanks. For 8 months there was no fighting in the West. The newspapers called it the phony war, the fake war, or the Sitzkrieg, the sitting war. French soldiers drank wine. British soldiers played football. They thought, maybe Hitler will stop. He did not stop. In April 1940, Germany attacked Denmark and Norway. Denmark is flat and small. They gave up in 6 hours. Norway has many mountains and snow. They fought for 2 months, but Germany won. Now Germany had places for their submarines. Chapter 8. The Fall of France. Now Hitler looked at France. France had a plan. It was the Maginot Line. This was a super wall on the German border. It had underground trains, air conditioning, and huge guns. France felt safe. The Germans can never cross this. But the Maginot Line did not go all the way to the sea. It stopped at a forest called the Ardennes. The French generals said, "The Ardennes is full of trees and hills. Tanks cannot drive there. It is impossible." The German generals said, "Watch us." In May 1940, the Germans attacked. They sent a small group to the Maginot Line to trick France. "Look at us!" At the same time, the main German army drove through the forest. They cut down trees. They built bridges. They drove day and night. They came out behind the French army. The French were totally surprised. "Where did you come from?" The German plan was dangerous, but very smart. They pushed the British and French armies against the sea. The British army was stuck at a beach called Dunkirk. They were going to be caught or killed. Chapter 9. Escape from Dunkirk. Winston Churchill was the new leader of Britain. He was a tough man. He smoked cigars and looked like a bulldog. He faced a very big problem. 300,000 of his best soldiers were stuck. If he lost them, Britain loses the war. He made a call on the radio. "Anyone with a boat? Please help!" It was amazing. Regular people in England got into their boats. Ferry boats, fishing boats, small ships. They sailed across the dangerous sea. German planes bombed them, but they kept going. They picked up the tired, dirty soldiers from the beach. They saved 338,000 men. They left all their tanks and guns in France, but they saved the men. Churchill told the government, "We will fight on the beaches. We will fight on the landing grounds. We will never give up." France was not so lucky. The Germans marched into Paris. Hitler visited Paris. He looked at Napoleon's grave. France gave up on June 22, 1940. In World War I, Germany fought for 4 years. Now Hitler won in only 6 weeks. Chapter 10. The Battle of Britain. Now Britain was all alone. Hitler thought Britain would give up. "Why fight?" said Hitler. "Just say that I won." Churchill said, "No." Hitler prepared Operation Sea Lion. This was the plan to attack England. But to cross the sea, Germany needed to stop the British ships and planes. Germany's air force, the Luftwaffe, attacked. This was the Battle of Britain. It was the first battle in history fought only in the air. German planes bombed British airports. British pilots ran to their Spitfires and Hurricanes. They fought in the sky above London. The British pilots were young. Some were only 19 years old. They were very tired. They slept in their clothes. But they had 2 good things. Radar. They could see the Germans coming. Fighting at home. If a British pilot jumped out with a parachute, he landed in a British field. He could go back to work. If a German pilot jumped, he was a prisoner. Hitler got tired of waiting. He stopped bombing the airports. He started bombing the cities. The Blitz. He bombed London every night for months. People slept in the subway stations, the Tube. It was very scary, but it was a bad idea. It gave the British Air Force time to fix their planes. Germany lost too many planes. Hitler stopped the plan. Britain was safe. Chapter 11. Hitler's biggest mistake. Hitler was angry. Britain was safe on its island. He could not attack Britain. So he looked at his map again. He looked east. He looked at Russia, the Soviet Union. Remember the deal between Hitler and Stalin? They promised not to fight. But Hitler was lying. He always wanted to attack Russia. He hated communists. And he wanted the land for German farmers. Also, Russia had oil. Tanks need lots of oil. On June 22, 1941, Hitler broke the promise. He started Operation Barbarossa. It was the biggest attack in history. 3 million German soldiers walked into Russia. They had 3,000 tanks and 2,000 planes. Stalin was very surprised. His secret men told him, "Germany is coming." But Stalin said, "No, Hitler is my friend. You are lying." When the attack started, Stalin hid in his room for days. The German army moved very fast. They took a lot of land. They caught millions of Russian soldiers. By October, the Germans were close to Moscow, the capital city. They could see the tall buildings. Hitler said, "We have won. Kick the door, and the house will fall down." But the house did not fall down. The Russian people fought back. They burned their own houses and farms. They said, "If we can't have it, the Germans can't have it." This is called the Scorched Earth Plan. The Germans had no food. They had no place to sleep. And then the snow started to fall. Chapter 12. General Winter. Russia has a secret weapon. It is not a gun. It is the weather. Russian winters are brutal. It gets to -40 degrees. The German soldiers were wearing summer uniforms. They thought the war would be over in 2 months. They did not bring coats. It was so cold that bread froze like bricks. It was so cold that the oil in the tanks turned into jelly. The German guns stopped working. The German soldiers were freezing to death. But the Russian soldiers were ready. They had fur coats. They had skis. They had special oil for their tanks. The German attack stopped right in front of Moscow. The Russian army counterattacked. They pushed the Germans back. For the first time, Hitler's army was stopped. The lightning war was dead. Now it was a slow, painful war. Chapter 13. Trouble in Asia. While Europe was burning, let's look at Asia. Japan was continuing its war in China. Japan wanted to be the boss of all Asia. They called it the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere. That is a fancy name for Japan takes everything. But Japan had a problem. They bought 80% of their oil from the USA. The USA did not like Japan's war. The USA said, "Stop attacking China or no more oil." Japan said, "No." The USA stopped selling oil. This is called an embargo. Japan panicked. Without oil, our ships will stop. Our planes will fall. They had two choices. 1. Stop the war and say sorry. 2. Take oil from somewhere else, like Indonesia, and fight the USA. Japan chose option 2, but the U.S. Navy was in the way. The U.S. fleet was parked in Hawaii at a place called Pearl Harbor. Japan made a secret plan. We will destroy the U.S. ships while they sleep. Then they will be too scared to fight. Chapter 14. The Giant Wakes Up. On the morning of December 7th, 1941, it was a quiet Sunday in Hawaii. Soldiers were eating pancakes. Some were sleeping. Suddenly, the sky was full of planes. They had red circles on their wings. Japanese planes. Boom! The attack lasted 2 hours. Japan sank or damaged 19 ships. They destroyed 300 planes. Over 2,400 Americans died. It was a terrible tragedy. Japan went home happy. We did it. The Americans are finished. But they made 2 big mistakes. 1. They did not destroy the oil tanks in Hawaii. 2. The American aircraft carriers, the most important ships, were not there. They were out at sea. Also, they made the Americans very angry. President Roosevelt went on the radio. He said, "This date will live in shame." The USA declared war on Japan. 3 days later, Hitler declared war on the USA. This was very stupid of Hitler. Now he was fighting Britain, Russia, and America. The USA was like a sleeping giant. Now the giant was awake, and the giant had huge factories. America stopped making cars. They started making tanks. They made thousands of planes and ships. Japan could not fight well against that. Chapter 15. The Turning Point in the Pacific. For 6 months, Japan won everything. They took the Philippines, Singapore, Hong Kong. But in June 1942, they wanted to take a small island called Midway. Admiral Yamamoto, the Japanese boss, set a trap. He wanted to surprise the U.S. Navy. But the Americans had a secret weapon: math. American code breakers solved the Japanese secret messages. They knew where Japan was going. They knew when. Admiral Nimitz, the American boss, said, "Okay, let's surprise them." The Japanese planes flew to bomb the island. The Japanese ships were full of fuel and bombs on the deck. Suddenly, American dive bombers fell from the sky. It happened very fast. In 5 minutes, the Americans sank 3 Japanese aircraft carriers. Later, they sank a 4th one. Japan lost its best ships and its best pilots. They could never get stronger after this. After the Battle of Midway, Japan started losing the war. Chapter 16. The Desert Fox versus the Monty. Back in Europe and Africa, Italy was trying to fight in North Africa, Egypt and Libya. Italy was losing. Hitler had to send help. He sent the Afrika Korps. Their leader was Erwin Rommel. He was a brilliant general. They called him the Desert Fox. He moved fast. He tricked the British. He pushed them all the way to Egypt. But Britain got a new general, too. His name was Bernard Montgomery, or Monty. Monty was very careful. He did not attack until he was 100% ready. He waited. He got more tanks. He got more soldiers. Then, in October 1942, he attacked at a place called El Alamein. It was a huge battle in the sand. Rommel was sick. His tanks had no fuel. The British smashed the German lines. Rommel had to run away. At the same time, American soldiers arrived in West Africa, Operation Torch. The Germans were trapped between the British and the Americans. By May 1943, the war in Africa was over. The Allies won. Chapter 17. Stalingrad. Now for the worst battle of the entire war. It is late 1942. Hitler needed oil very much. He sent his army south towards the oil fields in the Caucasus. On the way, there was a city on the Volga River. It was called Stalingrad. Hitler hated Stalin. He wanted to destroy the city with his name. Stalin said, "Take one step back and I will shoot you. Save the city." The German army reached the city. They bombed it to broken pieces. But the Russian soldiers hid in the ruins. The Germans had to fight for every building. They fought in basements. They fought in underground tunnels. They fought for the train station 15 times in 1 week. A German soldier wrote, "We have fought for 15 days for a single house." The front line is a corridor between the kitchen and the living room. They called it Rattenkrieg, War of the Rats. Winter came again. The German General Paulus was worried. "My leader, it is cold. We are tired." Hitler said, "Keep fighting." But the Russians had a plan. While the Germans were busy inside the city, the Russian army attacked the sides. On November 19, 1942, the Russians surrounded the city. 300,000 German soldiers were trapped inside. They had no food. They ate their horses. Then they ate rats. Paulus asked Hitler, "Please, can we run away?" Hitler said, "No, surrender is not allowed." Paulus waited, but his men were dying. On February 2, 1943, the Germans surrendered. 90,000 soldiers were caught. Only 6,000 ever went home again. This was the moment when everything changed. Before Stalingrad, Germany was winning. After Stalingrad, Germany was losing. The Russian bear was angry, and it was coming for Berlin. Chapter 18. Mussolini is out. The Allies, Britain and USA, won in Africa. Now they wanted to attack Europe. Stalin was screaming, "Attack France! Germany is killing me!" But Churchill said, "Not yet. France is too strong. Let's attack Italy first." In July 1943, the Allies attacked Sicily. It was a good result. The Italian people were tired. They were hungry. They looked at Mussolini and said, "You are fired." The King of Italy arrested Mussolini. Italy gave up. But Hitler was very, very angry. "You cannot quit," he yelled. He sent German soldiers into Italy. He saved Mussolini and made him boss of northern Italy. The Allies landed in Italy, but it was not soft. It was full of mountains. The Germans fought from every mountain. It was a slow, hard fight up the boot of Italy. But the Allies were getting closer, and they were preparing for the big one, France. Chapter 19. The Great Trick. It is 1944. The Allies, America, Britain, Canada, were ready to take France back. Hitler knew they were coming. He built a giant wall along the coast. It was called the Atlantic Wall. It had mines, sharp wire, and big machine guns. But the coast of France is very long. Hitler did not know where they would land. The Allies chose to land in Normandy, but they wanted Hitler to think they were going to Calais. Calais is the closest place to England. It is logical to go there. So the Allies played a trick. It was called Operation Fortitude. They built a fake army in England, opposite Calais. They built tanks made of fake material. They built planes made of wood. They used actors to look like generals. German spy planes flew over. They took photos. "Look," said the Germans, "thousands of tanks near Calais. They will attack there." Hitler moved his best tanks to Calais. He left Normandy weak. The trick worked very well. Chapter 20. D-Day. On June 6, 1944, the real attack finally began. It was called Operation Overlord, or just D-Day. It was the biggest sea attack in history. There were ships everywhere. There were planes everywhere. It looked like the world's busiest morning rush hour, but for war. During the night, paratroopers jumped from planes. They landed behind German lines. Some landed in the right place. Some landed in the wrong place. War is not great for perfect landings. In the morning, the boats reached the beaches. There were 5 beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juneau, Sword. Each beach had its own problems, but Omaha Beach had extra problems. At Omaha, the fight was very hard. The Americans saw high cliffs and strong fire. Many soldiers died before they even reached the sand. But they were brave. They moved forward, step by step. They climbed the cliffs and kept fighting. By the end of the day, the Allies had taken all the beaches. It was a huge success. Meanwhile, Hitler was sleeping. Yes, sleeping. His generals were afraid to wake him. Maybe they thought, "He will be angry. Let's wait." So they waited. When Hitler finally woke up, he said, "This is a trick. The real attack is at Calais." So he did nothing. For many hours he did nothing. By the time he understood the truth, it was too late. The Allies were already in France and moving forward. Chapter 21. The Race to Berlin. After the Allies left the beaches, they moved very fast. They reached Paris in August 1944. The people of Paris were extremely happy. They laughed, cried, and hugged the soldiers. They also gave them wine and cheese, because of course they did. It is Paris. Hitler told the German commander in Paris, "Burn the city. Destroy the Eiffel Tower." The commander looked at the beautiful city. He looked at the Eiffel Tower. He quietly put down the phone. He did not burn anything. Instead, he surrendered. Good choice. Now Germany was stuck in a giant vice, a tool that squeezes things tightly. The Americans and British pushed from the west. The Russians pushed from the east. The Russians moved very fast. They were angry, tired, and wanted revenge for everything Germany did to them. So they pushed harder and harder toward Berlin. Chapter 22. Hitler's Last Gamble. It was December 1944. Many people thought the war was almost finished. Some soldiers even said, "We will be home for Christmas." But Hitler had one more idea, a very bad idea. He took his last tanks, he took his last soldiers, even very old men and very young boys. Then he attacked the Americans in the Ardennes forest. Snow was everywhere. The attack was a complete surprise. The American line moved back, but it did not fall. A group of American soldiers was trapped in a town called Bastogne. The German commander sent a message, "Surrender or die." The American General McAuliffe wrote back with one funny word: "Nuts." This meant, "No way," or "You are crazy." The Americans stayed strong. They did not give up. Soon the sky became clear again. Allied planes returned and attacked the German army. Hitler lost his last chance to win. Now the road into Germany was open. Chapter 23. The End of the Reich. It was April 1945. The Soviet army entered Berlin. The city was almost destroyed. Many buildings were gone. Streets were full of smoke and broken stone. Hitler was hiding in a bunker, a small, safe room deep under the ground. He could hear Russian guns above him. He was shaking. He looked very old and very tired. He blamed the German people. He said, "They were not strong enough for me." On April 30th, Hitler understood he could not escape. He killed himself in the bunker. 1 week later, German generals signed papers of surrender. May 8, 1945 became VE Day, Victory in Europe. The war in Europe was finally over. The Nazis lost. People in London and New York danced in the streets. Music played. Flags waved. Everyone felt free at last. But far away in the Pacific, the soldiers did not dance. Their war was still not finished. Chapter 24. Island Hopping. In the Pacific Ocean, the USA was fighting Japan. Japan had taken hundreds of islands. The USA could not attack every single island. It would take 100 years. So they used a strategy called island hopping. They jumped over the strong islands. They attacked the weak ones. They built airports on them. Then they jumped to the next one. Hop, 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 closer to Japan. The closer they got to Japan, the harder the fighting became. The Japanese soldiers followed the code of Bushido. It meant, surrender is shameful, death is honor. They almost never surrendered. At the Battle of Iwo Jima, the Americans fought for a tiny volcanic island. They raised the U.S. flag on top of a mountain, but 7,000 Americans died there. At Okinawa, it was even worse. 12,000 Americans died. Japan also started using kamikazes. These were suicide pilots. They crashed their planes into U.S. ships on purpose. It was terrifying and very hard to stop. Chapter 25. The Difficult Choice. It was the summer of 1945. The United States was very close to Japan, but Japan still had about 2 million soldiers. They were even training normal people to fight with bamboo sticks. The U.S. generals made a plan and did the math. They said, if we invade Japan, maybe 500,000 Americans will die, and millions of Japanese people will die too. It was a terrible choice. President Roosevelt had died in April. The new president was Harry Truman. Truman knew a very important secret. American scientists had been working on the Manhattan Project. They split the atom and created a new kind of bomb, the atomic bomb. It was stronger than anything the world had ever seen. Truman sent a warning to Japan. Please surrender. If you do not, we will bring a terrible destruction from the sky. Japan did not answer. They prepared to fight to the end. Chapter 26. The Mushroom Cloud. On August 6, 1945, an American plane called the Enola Gay flew over the city of Hiroshima. It dropped one bomb. There was a huge boom. A bright white light filled the sky. Then a giant mushroom cloud rose up. The city disappeared in seconds. About 70,000 people died immediately. Many more died later from radiation, a sickness caused by the bomb. President Truman said, Japan, surrender now. Japan talked and argued. Some leaders said, maybe it was only one bomb. They were not sure. On August 9th, the USA dropped a second bomb on Nagasaki. On the same day, the Soviet Union declared war on Japan and attacked the Japanese army in China. It was too much. Japan could not continue the war. The Emperor of Japan, Hirohito, spoke on the radio. Most people had never heard his voice before. He said the war must end. On September 2nd, 1945, Japan signed the surrender. This day became VJ Day, Victory over Japan. Conclusion: The world after. World War II was finally over. It was the deadliest war in history. 60 million people died. That is 3% of all the people in the world at that time. The Allies found the Nazi concentration camps. They saw the horror of the Holocaust. Hitler had murdered 6 million Jewish people and many others. The world was shocked. They promised, never again. After the war, the world changed completely. 1. Europe was broken. Countries like Britain and France were poor and weak after years of fighting. 2. The USA and the Soviet Union were now the bosses of the world. 3. The United Nations was created. It was a new international group that wanted to stop future wars and help countries talk instead of fight. But there was a problem. The USA and the Soviet Union did not trust each other. The USA believed in capitalism. The Soviet Union believed in communism. They both had nuclear bombs. So they watched each other carefully and nervously. The hot war was finished, but the Cold War had just begun.